Nede is a 14-year-old chestnut gelding. He's a purebred Spanish horse, a PRE, and got originally imported directly from Spain. He has a weird issue with his head, and he has a head shaking since 1.5 years and is too dangerous to ride, and he had no luck in getting healed or find some relief with any sort of treatment. He saw a sports vet who injected him with steroids. He had chiropractic work, he had acupuncture, cold laser, red laser, supplements, massage, and nobody could help him to find release. So her owner is a little bit at the end of her knowledge of what to do and spent a lot of money and didn't get anywhere. So I offered to take a look at him and see if my line of work can give him some relief. From a CT scan, we know that he has pinched nerves, that he has a narrowing of the subarachnoidal space along his neck, that he has osteoarthritis and the lower cervical vertebrae, but nothing really explains his issue. The owner told me that nobody can really touch his head, that he doesn't like vets and runs to the other end of the paddock, and is very difficult to interact with. So I took my time to just connect with him and approach him without any pressure. I use some basic horsemanship skills of connecting with the horses I work with, so I take it very slow at the beginning, allow them to make contact, just kind of explore of how they react, how they are, how pushy they are or how scared they are, what it takes, and it takes some patience, but it's a very important part of my treatment. I was very pleased to see that he had a positive and curious attitude towards me. I cheated a little bit because when I was there working on 2 other horses, I walked by twice by his paddock and stable, and I just gave him a carrot and walked away without wanting anything from him. So that should have set the ground tone for our interactions and maybe make things a little bit easier. The first thing I noticed was that his eyes had kind of a wild look, that he was restless, that his tail was moving constantly. He had a hard time of finding some peace and quiet within himself. Also, when I stood here, he started looking back and there was nothing behind him, so very, very nervous. From working with all these horses, I realized that it's totally different for a horse if you stand on their right side than when you stand on their left side. Then it's completely different for them when you stay in front of them, and it also makes a difference if you touch them with 1 hand or with 2 hands. So at the beginning of my sessions, I explore all these options and try to find what's most comfortable for the horse and where it has its challenges. I've never witnessed a form of head shaking like this. It seems involuntary. It seems like the horse has no control over it. To me, it looked more like an epileptic seizure or some neurological disorder. So I was a little bit concerned of how much release I can give that horse, because it seemed to be something deep inside of his brain. His owner told me that he often puts his nose in the water and plays with it for a long time, and they explained to me that it's a form of release for him, that he feels comfortable doing that. When I observe him here, I feel like he almost gets obsessed about it, and the behavior actually doesn't get better from it, it just gets worse. And then I touched his muscle and realized his muscle and his nose were tight and super hot, so there's definitely some imbalance down at his nose. So I tried to get his attention away from that water trough and ask him to interact with me a little bit. That was not very successful. He always went back to that water, and the more I kind of touched him and stayed with him next to that water trough, the worse the head shaking became. Nobody found a clear pattern yet for his head shaking. He mostly has very bad days. Once in a while he gets a little bit release. Sometimes it gets better after they work him for a bit, but there's no consistency and no clear improvement with anything. She also observed that when he had massage treatments and they worked on his hind end, on his sacrum, that the head shaking actually got worse. The only obvious thing was that the head shaking got worse by flexion and by touching his head or his paw. I usually try to find the cause for an issue, and I asked if anything happened before January 2024 when the head shaking really showed up, but there was nothing and nobody could give me any clear indication of any possible issues, like no change in diet, no change in environment, nothing. What I found out is that when he was 5.5 years old, he had a trailer incident, meaning that he was tied in front of the trailer and he pulled back so hard that he broke the metal bar and ran backwards out of the trailer. So that was a big traumatic injury for him, which we all know must leave its traces in the paw, and I'm sure he's carrying a lot of tension there. The body is sometimes good for years to compensate for an injury, but then it comes to a point where the body suddenly feels like, no, not gonna happen. And then either we have more pain or other symptoms show up. So that's kind of the only logical explanation I would find for what's going on here. Since it didn't seem that he gets any release from putting his head in the water and my Bodywork didn't make any change in that setting, I decided to put him onto a halter and move a little bit further away from the water. So here we have a new setup, and time for me to just observe and wait to see what he's doing. And he comes up to me, gets closer, and kind of tries to interact with me. So I just kind of explore that relationship now and see what's going on. Still very obvious that there's not much quiet time. There's a lot of movement in tail and head and feet, so he has definitely no peace within himself. But I also realize he always walks into my space. Every time he shakes his head, he kind of comes into my boundaries, which is totally not okay. And I realize that that's a pattern, that he uses his head shaking also as a possibility to show dominance over somebody. So that's not going to happen with me here. And that's most likely a learned behavior on top of everything else. For me, it's very important to learn constantly about horsemanship and riding, and I feel that's a very important addition to my bodywork in order to be able to help the horse and sometimes even the rider. I know that normally people don't like videos on YouTube which are longer than like 10 minutes, but I feel it's a very important case, and I feel like if I explain what I'm doing and if people can see how much time sometimes actually need for the horse to calm down and for the horse to connect, and then it's going to help everybody's interaction with their own horses. So here I get to have my hand on his head for quite a while. He's nibbling on my hands, but I don't mind. So he's just tuning into me and stepping back into myself again, and that's just not going to happen. So I correct him every time he does that. There's still a lot of movement in our interaction, and I definitely have to be careful that I don't get run over, that I don't get hit in the head, because there's a lot of movement in his head. My sessions with horses are normally like 90 minutes because I feel it's important to not put any pressure on the horse. I like to maybe take half an hour to connect, and then the work I do after is way more efficient and effective. You can see that I stay very non-reactive. I don't react. I just kind of try to connect with the muscle and slowly work my way up to his paw, try to get 2 hands onto his head. But I don't react to any of his erratic behavior. I just make sure I put him in place when he tries to push into my space. In the human osteopathy literature, I found a technique from Andrew Taylor Still, who's the founder of osteopathy, where he adds compression into the people's atlanto-occipital joint in the direction of ease, and then brings that over in the direction of tension. And I'm trying that with the horse, just using his front teeth or his skull to push it back up into his paw, and I try to find the tension it needs in order to release what's going on in there. And he's very cooperative here in that moment. At the beginning, Nede felt totally overwhelmed, me touching his nose and his muzzle, and then I addressed the bones further up, the nasal bones, the lacrimal bones, and I gently worked on the tension he was carrying in the middle of his face. I respectfully work my way up his paw. I take all the setbacks I get, don't get upset. I just be patiently there for him and follow his rhythm. I try to put 2 hands on his head so I can apply a more focused and more directed tension towards his paw, towards his atlas and his occipital joint. If you observed enough, you can see that I didn't get any actual real head shaking like we saw at the water trough before. So there's some sort of improvement, and we're definitely moving into the right direction. He interacts, he could have walked away. Even though I normally work with horses without a halter, I feel this one is easier because I need to put him into his place once in a while and just keep him with me. We didn't get much actual visible release yet, so there's no licking and chewing, so not much snorting or head shaking. He's moving and not showing that erratic behavior, so I'm already happy, and let's just keep doing what I'm doing and tuning into his nervous system. Since he allows me now to touch his head more, I work with the muscles of the nozzle and the mouth and create some release. It doesn't feel as hot anymore, it becomes more soft. I still sense and feel a lot of tension in that pole and try to match that tension with my energy. So I'm kind of pushing hard into that pole and wait for release. And in the work I do, often it takes some time. I cannot just quickly touch and then move to the next point. And he still sticks with me, so obviously he's interested of getting more work done. We are finding more and more of these quiet moments where he doesn't feel so busy, where his energy is low, there's not much movement, and I do not try to do much then. I just kind of enjoy them, don't give any more input, and just kind of hang out with him and tune into his nervous system energetically. Since Nede regulated his nervous system a little better, he has more licking and chewing, he is more quiet in the present moment and kind of relaxes into the moment. He gets more and more quiet. I don't see any erratic head movements anymore, and decided that it's enough for today and a good time to stop our session. I came back to check on Nede 4 days later and found a totally different horse looking over the fence. He was more relaxed, his face didn't carry so much tension, he was inquisitive and curious and interactive and said hi. So I went into his paddock and brought him a piece of apple and then just was there with him, spending some time. And actually I tried to trigger some of that head shaking by approaching him and touching him all over the place, and to my surprise I had no luck, so there was no shaking the whole session I was with him. What's most obvious is that in that second session is way more licking and chewing, way more relaxation in his face, in his muscle, and he is in a much better place than when I saw him 4 days ago.